Wow. Hello, Aaron. Congrats on 100 followers. Thank you, thank you. I didn't plan anything. I also started stream and realized, I should probably use the bathroom before I do this. And that's what it's amazing. And I might won't have to get up in the middle of it. I think I have everything set up. Should I have the recording thing? I can just yoink the audio. Oh wait, I didn't make a command for the thing. Do that now. Where is it? Where'd I put it? Here it is. Where's Jim? Alright, I don't know. I called the command. Or did I? Okay, I didn't. There we go. That's the last 6 chapters that I read last time. And I realized how I'm gonna do this. Wait. Dude, Samurai. I should probably record this in the same thing, so it's just in one audio file. I'm smart. I know what I'm doing. Do I? I don't. Wait, I can just stitch it together. Never mind, go back. I hope you are all well. I will do more reading today. Hopefully for longer, so we find out more of what happens. And we'll slowly assemble the audiobook. It's very scuffed and held together with glue and duct tape. Should be good then, I think. Alright, I have the book, which is necessary to read. I have Audacity so I can record screaming. It's on. Yes. Perfect. Books are nice. Books are nice indeed. Looks good on a shelf. Yes, I actually bought the book because it had a pretty cover, and that's why I'm reading this. That's literally the only reason. Try and find this. Oh well, there's more. That's. I literally just a book by its cover. Yes. It's advertising. It's all a scam to get me to buy books, and it works. It's also a good book by the non-covery bits, the inside. There you go. Wait, smart. Wait, I can do this a smart way. This can go away. Oh, the not pretty parts? Yeah, the wordy bits. I think this works. I think I'm legally allowed to do this. Breaks it. Bam. Why is it like this? Oh no, these are the books I got. The one I'm reading is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, of course. And then Treasure Island. And it's got pretty fish on it. It's beautiful. And there are illustrations in it, but I haven't gotten to any of the illustrations yet, so... Yes. I like fish, that's good. Toki is great. He do be great. Wait, why is Toki called... Is this Toki lore that I'm missing? Is Toki a fish? I feel like... I'm not very knowledgeable. Toki fish persona? Okay, alright. Kinda what I thought. Wasn't sure. Glad to get calm. To be honest, I don't know if the goldfish is also them, but surely it's Toki enough. It's Toki related, at least. Which is what matters. I'm messing things up, because everything on my desk is a mess. Fact check, just DM Toki really quick. Wait, hold on. I do need one more thing. About Toki is chibi and also fish. There's the little fish prince and the small gray rabbit too. We're friends here together. Toki draws all day, slowly, little by little, large activity. What's a stream? Toki do be fish, I guess? And there's a rabbit too. Very good to know. People management. Never knew about the rabbit either. Rabbits are... doesn't need to be here. Go. Alright. I think I can get started then. Right, yes. I'm good to go. So I shall start reading. Oof. Chapter 7. An unknown species of whale. Although I was stunned by this unexpected fall, I nevertheless kept a very clear impression of my sensations. At the time, I was at first drawn down to a depth of about 20 feet. I am a good swimmer, though without pretending to rival Byron or Edgar Poe, who were masters of the art, and in that plunge I did not lose my presence of mind. 2 vigorous strokes brought me to the surface of the water. My first care was to look for the frigate. Had the crew seen me disappear? Had the Abraham Lincoln veered round? Would the captain put out a boat? Might I hope to be saved? The darkness was intense. I caught a glimpse of a black mass disappearing in the east, its beacon lights dying out in the distance. It was the frigate. I was lost. "Help! Help!" I shouted, swimming in desperation toward the Abraham Lincoln. My clothes encumbered me. They seemed glued to my body and paralyzed my movements. I was sinking. I was suffocating. "Help!" This was my last cry, my mouth filled with water. I struggled desperately as I was being drawn down into the abyss. Suddenly, my clothes were seized by a strong hand, and I felt myself quickly drawn up to the surface of the sea. And I heard, yes, I heard these words pronounced in my ear. "If you would be so good as to lean on my shoulder, sir, you would swim with much greater ease." I seized with one hand my faithful counsel's arm. "Is it you?" said I. "You?" "Who else would it be, sir?" replied Conseil calmly. "I await your orders, sir." "Good lad. So you were thrown overboard also by the concussion?" "Not exactly, sir, but being your service, sir, I naturally followed you down." The worthy fellow seemed to regard his act as nothing strange. "What's become of the frigate?" "Oh, the frigate?" queried Conseil, as he turned over on his back so that he could float with less effort. "I think perhaps you had better not count too much on her assistance. And why not, pray? Because, sir, just as I was jumping into the sea, I heard the helmsman shout that the crew and rudder were smashed. Smashed? Yes, sir. Chewed into bits, I suppose, by the monster's teeth. That's the only injury the Abraham Lincoln got, but it makes things bad for us, don't you think, sir? For she no longer answers her helm. Then we are lost indeed. Oh, I shouldn't say that, sir, answered Conseil quietly. Whatever happens, we've got several hours of life before us, and one can do a lot of things in several hours, sir. The servant's imperturbable coolness buoyed my fainting spirits considerably. I began to strike out more vigorously, but I found myself cramped by my clothes, which stuck to me like a leaden weight. And so I had much difficulty in swimming. Conseil noticed this. With your permission, sir, I'll make a slit, he said. And slipping an open knife underneath my clothes, he ripped them up from top to bottom very cleverly. Then he quickly slipped them off me while I was doing the swimming for both of us. After I had learned my lesson from the servant, I applied my new knowledge and did the same for him. Then we continued to swim close to each other. We might whistle to keep up our courage, but none the less our plight was a terrible one. Even if our disappearance had been noted, which in itself was unlikely, the frigate could not tack and come for us if its helm was gone. Conseil adopted this supposition and laid his plans accordingly. The phlegmatic boy was perfectly self-possessed. He felt that, as our only chance of rescue lay in our being picked up by one of the Abraham Lincoln's boats, we had to contrive somehow to wait for them as long as possible. I resolved to husband my strength so that both of us should not be worn out at the same. And this is how we managed it. While one of us was floating on his back, quite still, with arms crossed on his breast and legs stretched out, the other would swim and push his comrade ahead of him. This towing business, of course, would not last longer than, say, 10 minutes at a stretch, but relieving each other in this fashion, we could reasonably hope to keep ourselves afloat for hours, perhaps until dawn. Poor chance, you say? Yes, but yet hope springs eternal in the heart of man. Moreover, there were two of us, and so much did this fact lighten my spirit that I declare, believe it or not, I could not have despaired even if I had tried to. The collision of the frigate and Citation had taken place about 11 o'clock the evening before, so I reckoned we should have to keep from drowning 8 hours until sunrise. The sea was unusually calm by now, which was a great factor in our favor. Sometimes, as I swam, I endeavored to penetrate with my gaze the intense darkness that was dispelled only by the phosphorescence caused by our movements. I watched the luminous wavelets that broke over my hand. Their mirror-like surface was spotted with silvery rings. One might have said we were in a bath of quicksilver. It was nearly 1 o'clock, as well as I could judge, when I was suddenly seized with overmastering fatigue. My limbs stiffened and contracted under the strain of a violent cramp. Conseil was forced to keep me above the water, and our preservation now devolved upon him alone. I heard the poor fellow pant, his gasping breath grew short and hurried. I knew he could not bear me up much longer. Let me go and save yourself, I ordered him. Leave you, sir? Never, he replied. I'll drown first. Just then the moon peered through the fringes of a thick cloud that the wind was driving eastward. The surface of the sea glittered with its rays. The kindly light brought me new courage. I raised my head. I looked toward every point of the compass and saw the frigate. She was a good 5 miles away from us, a dark mass, hardly discernible, but no small boat anywhere to be seen. I started to cry out, but of what avail would it be at such a distance from help? Besides, it seemed as if my swollen lips could utter no sound. Conseil, however, could still articulate his words, and I heard him, at intervals, repeating, "Help! Help!" For an instant our movements were suspended, that we might listen for an echoing cry. It might have been only the singing in my ears, but it seemed as if a shout answered our call. "Did you hear anything?" I demanded. Without question, "Yes, sir." And once again Conseil gave vent to a despairing cry. This time there could be no mistake about it. A human voice was responding to us. Was it from the throat of another poor wretch like ourselves, abandoned to the mercies of mid-ocean, another victim of the shock sustained by the frigate, or rather did the hail come from a small boat that was searching for us in the shrouding night? Conseil made one last effort. He leaned for support on my shoulder as I struck wildly out in an attempt to swim and raise himself half out of the water. Then he fell back, exhausted. "What did you see?" I gasped. "I saw," murmured the poor fellow. "I saw, but do not Hawk, save all your strength. What had he glimpsed? I know not why, but the thought of the monster flashed into my mind for the first time. The voice from the depths? Surely no longer do Jonahs take refuge in whales, bel- bellies. At any rate, Conseil had recovered sufficiently to be showing me again. He raised his head at intervals, looked before us, and uttered a cry of recognition, which was always responded to by a voice that was drawing nearer and nearer. I could scarcely hear anything more. My strength was utterly sapped. My fingers were stiff as marbles. My hand no longer afforded me support. My mouth, convulsively opening, was filled with salt water. I raised my head one last time. Cold crept over me, and I sank like a plummet. A hard object struck me, a stunning blow. I clung to it instinctively, and then I felt that I was being drawn upward, that I was being brought again to the surface of the water. My chest collapsed. I fainted away. But my swoon was not for long, as it was not proof against the vigorous rubbings to which I was subjected. I soon opened my eyes. "Are you there, Conseil?" I asked. "At your service, sir," replied the boy. Just then, by the waning light of the moon, which was sinking down toward the horizon, I saw a face that was not the servant's, and that I immediately recognized. "Ned, of all people!" I cried. "The very same, sir, and come here to secure his prize," answered the Canadian. "Be cast overboard by the shock of the frigate? You've guessed it, Professor, but I had better luck than you, for I got a footing on this floating island without loss of time." "What island are you talking about?" "Well, if you prefer the expression, on this gigantic narwhal." "My poor head is still dizzy, Ned, so explain yourself." And it didn't take me long to discover why the point of my harpoon was blunted, also why it failed to pierce the skin. "But tell me, why, man? Why was it?" "Because, my dear Professor, this particular beastie is made of sheet iron." At the Canadian's last words, something seemed to snap in my brain. I wriggled quickly to the top of the half-submerged being, or object, which served as our temporary refuge. I kicked it. Verily, it had a hard, impervious body, and not the soft substance that forms the organism of great marine mammalia. But still, this flinty matter might be a bony carapace, like that possessed by antediluvian monsters, and, for aught I knew, I should be free to classify this monster among amphibious reptiles, such as tortoise or alligators. And even as I debated these matters, I knew in my heart of hearts the truth. The black ridge that supported me was smooth, polished, without scales. The blow of my foot produced a metallic sound, and, incredible though it may be, the monster seemed to be made of riveted plates. Yes, by Jove, there was no further doubt about it. This marvel, this almost miraculous phenomenon that had puzzled the learned world and distorted the thinking apparatus of the seamen of two hemispheres, was, strange to relate, a much more amazing thing than anyone had dreamed of, for it was of human and not of divine construction. In any case, we had not a moment to lose. We were precariously perched upon the back of some sort of submersible boat, which appeared to be, so far as I could judge, a huge fish of steel. Ned Land's mind on this point was already made up. Conseil and I could but agree. At this point in my musing, about a bubbling noise arose at the rear of this strange monster, which was evidently propelled by a screw. It began to move. We had just time enough to seize hold of the upper part, which rose about 7 feet above the water. Happily, the speed was not great. "As long as it sails on its present level keel," muttered the harpooner, "I shall not worry. But if the tarnal thing takes a notion to dive, I shouldn't give 2 straws for my chance of life." 1 straw would have been enough to offer. It became imperative that we communicate with the beings, whoever they were, that were shut up inside the machine. I searched all over the exposed part for an opening, a panel, or a manhole, but the lines of iron rivets solidly driven into the joints of the plates were clear and uniform. Besides, the moon had finally vanished, and we were in total obscurity. The night dragged by with leaden feet, but at last it passed. My hazy remembrance of things, due, no doubt, to exposure and faintness, prevents my describing all my impressions at this time. I recall but a single circumstance. During lulls in the clamor of wind and sea, I heard on several occasions what seemed to be vague sounds, a sort of fugitive harmony produced by faraway tones. What was, then, the secret of this mysterious submarine craft, of which the whole habitable globe had vainly seeking the solution? What sort of creatures dwelt within the walls of this strange boat? What mechanical agent caused its prodigious velocity? Dawn arrived. The morning mists hemmed us in. in on every side, but they soon took flight before the arrows of the sun. I was on the point of examining the hull, which formed on deck a species of horizontal platform, when I noticed that we were gradually sinking. "Sink it all!" shouted Ned Land as he kicked against the resounding plate. "Open up, you inhospitable rascal!" Fortunately, the sinking movement ceased. All at once, a noise like that of iron being violently pushed aside came from the interior of the boat. An iron plate was lifted. A man appeared, uttered an odd cry, and immediately disappeared from view. Some moments later, 8 stout men with masked faces appeared stealthily and drew us down into their formidable machine. Awesome. Dun dun dun. Escaped. Oh no. Drink water. Good. Definitely needs to take a break. Water, I think. I knew this last time too. Bah. Remember to drink water. Is important. Stay hydrated. There we go. Get started. In Roman numerals, that's 8. My chair. Alright. Chapter 8. Our new quarters. This forcible seizure, carried out with cruel roughness, was accomplished with the rapidity of lightning. What with weakness and with dread of the unknown, I was quivering like an aspen leaf. With whom had we to deal? There could be but one sane answer to such a query. We had doubtless encountered some new sort of pirate or buccaneer who explored the sea in his own fashion. Hardly had the narrow sea panel been closed upon me when I found myself cast into utter darkness. Dazzled from the outer light, my eyes could now distinguish nothing. I felt my naked feet cling to the rungs of an iron ladder. Lydland and Conseil, like myself, seized and firmly held, were carried struggling down after me. At the bottom of the iron ladder, a door was opened, and when we were once drawn through its aperture, it was immediately shut after us with a slam. We were alone. Where, I could not guess, nor yet imagine. All was black as Erebus, and the gloom was of such unrelieved density that even after several minutes my eyes had been unable to discern the very faintest glimmer. Meanwhile, the harpooner, whose feelings had been much ruffled by the recent high-handed proceedings, proceeded to give free rein to his indignation. "By the pluck," he fumed, "here are people as badly off as the Scotch for hospitality. They are as gentle as cannibals, and I shouldn't be surprised if they were man-eaters, but I'll be right there when they start to swallow me." "Put on the soft pedal, my friend," advised the quiet Conseil. "While there's life, there's hope, and we're not quite done for yet." "Not quite, perhaps," the Canadian retorted sharply, "but pretty near it, the way things look. Anyway, I've got my trusty bowie knife still, and you don't need to see well to the first of these blasted pirates to lay a hand on me." "Avast there, my lad," I said, "and do not make our situation worse by any act of useless violence. Who knows but what they are listening to us? Let's use our energy trying to find out where we are." I groped blindly about me. In 5 steps, I came to an iron partition made of plates bolted together. Then, in turning back, I stumbled against a wooden table, near which were ranged several chairs. The floorboards of this prison cell were covered by a thick mat of phorium, which deadened the sound of feet. The bare walls revealed no trace of window or door. Conseil, going around the room in the opposite direction, met me, and together we returned to the center of the cabin. It measured 20 feet by 10. As to its height, Ned Land, despite its great size, could not measure it. Half an hour may have passed without any alteration or betterment in our situation when the dense darkness suddenly yielded to extreme radiance. Our prison was brilliantly lighted by being filled with a luminous matter so strong that at first it was agony to endure it. In its whiteness and intensity, I recognized that same electric light that had played around the submarine boat like a splendid aura of phosphorescence. After shutting my eyes for a spell, I opened them and saw that this radiant agency came from half-glow, which was unpolished and set in the roof of the cabin. "At last, one can see his own nose," cried Ned Land, who, knife in hand, was standing in an attitude of defense. "Ah," I said, "we are still in the dark about ourselves." "All things come to him who waits, sir," remarked the imperturbable counsel. The illumination of our premises enabled me to subject them to a minute scrutiny. They contained no other furniture than the table and 5 chairs. An invisible door, if there was one, was hermetically sealed. No noise was heard from without. All seemed dead in the interior of this boat. An uncanny feeling of emptiness stole upon me. Were we moving? Did we float on the surface of the ocean, or were we diving into its depths? I could not guess. Noise as of bolts was now heard. A door opened, and 2 men made their appearance. One of them was short of stature, broad-shouldered, and evidently very muscular. He had robust limbs, a strong head, an abundance of black hair, a thick mustache, a quick, penetrating glance, and the vivacity of manner that one associates with the population of southern France. The second stranger deserves a more detailed description. A disciple of Gratiolet or Engel would have read his face as clearly as the page of an open book. I decided without hesitation upon his dominant characteristics: self-confidence because his head was well set on his shoulders, and his black eyes looked about him with cool assurance; calmness because his skin, rather pale in hue, betokened the slow pulsing of his blood; energy indicated by the rapid contraction of his eyebrows; and courage because his deep breathing denoted great lung power and capacity. Whether this person was 35 or 50 years of age, who could say? He was tall, he had a broad forehead, a straight nose, a clearly cut mouth, and beautiful teeth. His finely tapering hands evidenced highly nervous temperament. This man was certainly the finest specimen of the genus Homo that I had ever met. One particular feature of his appearance was his eyes, set rather far apart, and thus able to take in at a single glance almost a fourth part of the visible horizon. This unusual faculty, as I come to know later, gave him a range of vision far superior to that of Ned Land. When the stranger centered his gaze upon an object, his eyebrows met, his eyelids practically closed, so as to contract the field of his sight, and it seemed as if he thus magnified the things which were diminished by distance from him, as if he pierced those masses of water opaque to our eyes, as if he read the very secret depths of the sea. The 2 unknown intruders on our privacy wore caps made from the fur of the sea otter, were shod with sea boots of sealskin. Besides this, they were dressed in clothes of a peculiar texture which allowed free movement of the limbs. The taller of the 2, evidently the chief on board, studied us with great attention without uttering a single syllable. After some moments, he turned to his companion and conversed with him in an unknown tongue. It was a sonorous and flexible dialect, evidently as the vowels seemed to admit of extremely varied accentuation. The other stranger replied by a shake of the head and added 2 or 3 perfectly incomprehensible words. Then he seemed to question me by a look. I replied to his unspoken invitation that I did not know this language, but he appeared not to understand me, and the situation grew rather embarrassing. "If you were to tell our story, sir," Counsel suggested, "perhaps this gentleman might understand the drift of your words." This seemed to the only rational thing to do, and therefore I commenced the tale of our adventures and mishaps, articulating each syllable precisely and not omitting a single detail. I gave our names and rank, introducing in person Professor Aronnax, servant Counsel, and Mr. Ned Land, harpooner. The man with the soft, calm eyes listened to my narrative quietly, politely even. He missed no word I spoke, but nothing in his face showed that he understood my yarn. When I finished, he remained silent. There was another resource at my command. To speak English, Perhaps the strangers would understand this practically universal idiom. I commanded it, and also the German tongue, well enough to read them fluently, but not to speak them correctly. But needs must, it was highly necessary to make our position understood. You take up the statement in your turn, I whispered to the harpooner, and speak your best Anglo-Saxon, but you will have to succeed better than I have. Ned did not require a second invitation, but began our story again from the start. To his great disgust, he was able to make himself no more intelligible than I. Our visitors did not stir. They quite clearly knew neither the language of Arago or of Faraday. Very much put out by our ill success, having vainly exhausted our philological resources, I scarcely knew what to do next. Conseil attempted our rescue. You will permit me, sir. I'll tell it to them in German. But in spite of his elegant turns of speech and his good accent, the poor lad had no success with the German report. Finally, quite nonplussed, I tried to recall my early school lessons in Caesar and Virgil, and to narrate our story in Latin, but all with no result. After I had finished my last attempt, the stew changers exchanged some words in their unknown tongue and retired. The door shut behind them. The crying shame, burst out Ned Land, yielding to his 20th access of fury. We chattered to these rogues in French, English, German, and Latin, and neither of them has the dashed politeness to answer us. Don't give way to anger, I cautioned the impotent Canadian. It will not get us anywhere. But look here, Professor, retorted my irascible comrade. We are jolly well sure to die of starvation in this iron cage. Oh, ejaculated Conseil philosophically. We can hold out a long time yet. Friends, I said with more conviction than I actually felt, we must not abandon hope. We've all been worse off than this a lot of times. Do me the favor to wait a while before passing an opinion upon the commander and crew of this boat. My opinion is formed, returned Ned Land sharply. They are rascals and come from Rogaland. My dear fellow, I reminded him, that country is not clearly indicated on the map of the world, and I wish to know the nationality of our two captors. They are not English, French, or German, so much is sure. I am inclined to think there is southern blood in them, but I cannot determine by their appearance whether they are Spaniards, Turks, Arabians, or Indians. As to their lingo, it is perfectly unintelligible. That's the worst about not knowing all tongues, said Consul. There should be one universal language. Hardly had he uttered these words of wisdom when the door opened again, and a man in steward's uniform appeared. He brought us garments of every sort, coats and trousers made out of stuff I did not know. I hastened to cover my nakedness, and my companions were not slow in following my example. Well we dressed, the steward, who so far as we could determine was deaf and dumb, arranged a table and laid 3 covers. I call that something like, said Counsel, putting his lips with it. Ha! Exclaimed the harpooner, whose rancor nothing could appease. What do you suppose they're going to give us? Tortoise liver, fillets of shark, and sea dog steaks? That's my guess. We shall soon see. The dishes, with their silver covers, were placed upon the table. We took our places. It looked as if we had to deal with cultured people, at least, and if it had not been for the electric light that flooded us, I could have fancied I was in the dining room of the Adelphi Hotel at Liverpool, the Grand Hotel in Paris. There was neither bread nor wine. The water was fresh and clear, but it was water, and that beverage did not suit Ned Land's taste as well as others. Among the dishes that were brought us, I recognized several fish, well cooked and with savory dressings. But some of the foods, though excellent in taste, I could not guess at, not even to which kingdom they belonged, whether animal or vegetable. As to the dinner service, it was elegant, nothing less. Each utensil, spoon, fork, knife, and plate had a letter engraved on it, with a motto above. Here is the facsimile: Mobilis in mobilium. Mobili N. The letter was no doubt the initial of the strange man who had commanded a boat at the bottom of the seas. Now Ned and Conseil did not bother much about either mottos or tasteful dinnerware. Instead, they devoured their food, and truth to tell, I was soon doing likewise. For the first time, I felt assured concerning our fate, since it was quite evident that our host did not intend to let us die of want. Sooner or later, everything has an end, even the hunger of sailormen, who have not touched food for 15 hours. The instant our appetites were sated, we were overcome by an distant drowsiness. Faith, I shall sleep well, Counsel, as he wiped his lips for the last time with a napkin. And so shall I, added Ned Land. No sooner said than done, my 2 comrades stretched themselves on the cabin carpet and were soon in the arms of Morpheus. For my part, too many perplexing thoughts were crowding on my brain, too many insoluble riddles pressed upon me, Too many fancies kept my eyes at least half open. First of all, where were we? And next, what strange power carried us forward? I felt, or imagined I felt, the machine sinking to the lowest bed of the sea. Dreadful nightmares beset me. I saw in the mysterious hiding place of ocean a whole menagerie of unknown animals, among which the submersible boat seemed to belong. Living and moving as they did, formidable as were they, then, by degrees, my brain grew calmer, my fancy wandered off into the realms of vague unconsciousness that border Neverland, and I soon fell into deep and refreshing slumber. Gah. Hello, say. Hello, say. Thank you for the raid. I was reading. That was recent, I think, though. Oh, yeah, it was a minute ago. Hello, Raiders. Oops, Octopath 2, Octopus Traveler 2 was fun. Whoa. Hold on, I have to drink water. Go. Now I gotta clean, so farewell. Goodbye, say. Good luck with cleaning. Maybe Speedy. Freaky. Whatever people say we can. Oh wait, I should chat out. I know what I'm doing. Go follow, say. Look at that, I'm professional. I don't think I have any clip playing thing in here. I don't think it's gonna start shouting at me from wherever it exists. Oh no, it does start shouting at me. Fascinating. Okay. I don't think you hear this though. I think it's just a me thing. Yeah, okay, I want to say that did appear on stream. It's still going, what the? Wait.
Wait,
Yeah.
John.
Oh, I'm shutting it.
I suggest a scrambled egg mix.
Where is this? Where is it playing? Oh no, it's done now though. Okay, whatever. That was interesting. Just teleporting around a bit, it's fine. Surely. That did play on stream, I think everything's doubled. Okay, everything works in here except this one. Surely it's fine. Surely fine. Yeah, it's fine, surely. Oh well. Back to continue reading. Over what? I should save this. Remember to save your work, folks. Okay, there we go. Alright, now continue reading more book. Roman numerals. Wait. How many do I know? resets at some point. Okay, I think I can do it. I think I know Roman. Enough with. And. Alright, back at it. Chapter 9, Ned Land attacks. I do not know how long I wooed Neth's twin sister, Sleep, but my dozing must have been a protracted one, for it rested me completely from my harrowing fatigue. I was the first to wake. My companions had not moved from their postures that I had last noted. They were still stretched unconscious in their corner. I was scarcely roused from my somewhat hard couch when I felt my brain to be free of all whimsy and vertigo. With a clear mind, I began an exhaustive examination of our cell. Nothing was changed inside. Our prison was a prison still, and we, to all intents and purposes, bound captives. The one thing I noted was that during our unconsciousness, the steward had cleared away the dishes from the table. It was difficult for me to breathe with any comfort. The heavy air of the confined space seemed to weigh upon my lungs. Although the cell was fairly large, we had consumed a great part of the oxygen that it contained. I remember that each man consumes, in 1 hour, the oxygen contained in more than 176 pints of air. And this air, charged as it now was, with a quantity of carbon dioxide nearly equal to the oxygen that had been lost, became unbearable. It thus became necessary to renew the atmosphere of our prison, and no doubt also that of the other inhabited parts of the boat. This raised a question in my mind. How would the commander of this floating submersible proceed to achieve this? Would he obtain new air by chemical means, and getting by heat the oxygen contained in chlorite of potash and in absorbing carbon dioxide by caustic potash? Or would he employ a more convenient, economical, and consequently more probable means? Would he rise like a cetacean to the ocean of the water and take breath, thus renewing for 24 hours the boat's atmospheric provision? In fact, I was already obliged to increase my respirations to draw from the cell the little oxygen it contained, when suddenly I was refreshed by a current of pure air, perfumed with saline emanation. It was an invigorating sea breeze, charged with iodine. I opened my mouth wide, and my lungs saturated themselves with fresh particles. At the same time, I felt the boat rolling. The iron-plated monster had evidently just risen to the surface of the ocean to breathe, after the fashion of whales. I found out from that the mode of ventilating the boat. When I had inhaled this air freely, I sought the conduit pipe which had conveyed to us the beneficial whiff, and I was not long in finding it. Above the door was the ventilator, through which volumes of fresh air renewed the impoverished atmosphere of the cell. I was making my observation when, under the influence of this reviving air, Ned and Conseil awoke almost at the same time. They rubbed their eyes, stretched themselves, and in an instant were on their feet. "Did you sleep well, sir?" asked Conseil politely. "Very well, my brave boy. And you, Ned?" "Soundly, Professor. But I don't know whether I am right or not. There seems to be a sea breeze." The seaman could not be mistaken, and I told the Canadian all that had passed during his sleep. "Good," said he. "That accounts for those roarings we heard when the supposed narwhal sighted the Abraham Lincoln." "Quite so, Ned. It was taking breath. Only, Mr. Aronnax, I have no idea what time it is, unless it is dinner time." "Dinner time, my good fellow? Nonsense. Say breakfast time, rather, for we certainly have added another day to the calendar." "Which means, sir, that we have slept clear round the clock?" asked Conseil. "To the best of my judgment, we have." "I'm in no mind to contradict," said Ned Land, "but whatever the meal be called, the steward will be welcome." "Of course, we must conform to the rules on board, whatever they may be," suggested my servant mildly. "It is but natural that our appetites should outrun the dinner hour." "There you go, friend Conseil," muttered Ned peevishly. "You are never out of temper, and always calm as a stuffed mummy. Left to yourself, you would say grace before your food was cooked and die of starvation rather than complain." The time was getting on, and we had nothing to occupy our minds save thoughts of the coming meal. They were really neglecting us too long if their intention toward us were gentle ones. Tormented by the gnawings of hunger, Ned Land grew from minute to minute, if possible still angrier, and notwithstanding his fair promises, I dreaded an explosion when he next found himself confronted by one of the boat's crew. For another 2 hours the harpooner nursed his temper actively. He cried out, he shouted, but all in vain. The walls were stone deaf. Not a sound was to be heard in all the boat. Again, death seemed hovering about us. We were not moving, for surely in that case I should have felt the vibrations of the hull under the throbbing roof. Plunged as we must be in the profound depths of the waters, the boat no longer seemed to belong to the earth. The silence was dreadful. I was frankly apprehensive. Council, need I say it, was as calm as a stone image of Buddha. Ned Land roared. Just then, a slight noise was heard outside. Steps sounded on the metal flags. The locks were turned, the door opened, and the steward entered our prison. Before I could rush forward to prevent it, the Canadian had thrown the man to the floor and was holding him fast by the throat. The steward was strangling under the grip of Ned's powerful hand. Conseil was already busy trying to unclasp the harpooner's claw from his half-suffocated victim, and I was flying to the rescue, when suddenly I was rooted to the spot by hearing the following words spoken in perfect French. Be quiet, Mr. Land. And you, Professor, will you be so good as to listen to me? That was a short chapter. Okay. I also want to say that this book was written by a French person, I think. Maybe, I'm not sure. Or was looking at some book. That was weird. This might explain all the French in it. With the French. There's no French. Oh, continue. Also adjustment. Chapter 10. The Man of the Seas. It was the commander of the submarine who addressed us. At his words, the Canadian rose quickly to his feet. The steward, nearly dead though he was, tottered out at a sign from his master, and such was the power of the commander that not a gesture of the strangled fellow betrayed the hatred he must have felt for his assaulter. Consul, in spite of himself, seemed actually interested in the situation. I was stupefied with surprise and waited in silence whatever result the scene would bring. Our visitor, with folded arms, leaned against the corner of the table and scanned us with profound attention. Why did he hesitate to speak French? Was he already regretting the words he had just uttered in the French tongue? One might almost think so. After an interval of silence, which no one of us even dreamed of interrupting, he said in a quiet but penetrating voice, Gentlemen, I speak French, English, German, and Latin equally well. I could therefore have appeased your curiosity at our first interview, but I wish to know you and then to reflect. The story told by each of you, agreeing in all salient points, convinced me of your identity. I know now that fate has brought to me Pierre Aronnax, professor of natural history in the Museum of Paris, entrusted with a scientific mission abroad. Council is his servant. Ned Land, of Canadian birth, is a harpooner on board the frigate Abraham Lincoln of the United States' name. I bowed assent. It was not a question that the commander put to me, therefore there was no spoken answer to be made. This man expressed himself with perfect fluency, without a trace of form in the accent. His phrases were neatly turned, his enunciation clear, and his ease of speech remarkable, and yet I could not recognize him as a fellow countryman. He continued, You may have imagined, sir, that I delayed overlong in paying your second visit. My excuse is that I wish to consider thoroughly what part to act toward you, and I had many grounds for hesitation. An evil fate has brought you, sir, into the presence of a man who's broken all ties that bound him, humankind. You have come to torment my existence. But unintentionally, I interjected. What? Exclaimed the stranger, slightly raising his voice. Was it unintentional that the Abraham Lincoln pursued me across the seas, that you took passage in the frigate, that your cannonballs rebounded from the plating of my vessel, that Mr. Land struck me with his harpoon? No one could fail to detect hardly restrained irritation in these words, but of course I had a very natural answer for his recrimination, and I offered it at once. My dear sir, I said, you are doubtless unaware of the worldwide discussions concerning you which have occupied humanity. You do not know, presumably, that various accidents caused by collisions with your submarine machine have stirred public feeling in both hemispheres. I shall not vex your ears with a recital of theories without number which sought to explain the marvel of which you alone possess the secret, but you must understand that in pursuing you across the high seas of the Pacific, that Abraham Lincoln believed himself to be hunting down some powerful sea monster, of which it was necessary to rid the ocean at any cost. My statement was not without its effect upon the commander, for although a half-smile curled his lips, his next remarks were made in a calmer tone. Mr. Aronnax, dare you tell me that your frigate would not as soon have pursued and wrecked a submersible as a monster? Such questions should not be asked. They are altogether too embarrassing. I really believe Captain Farragut would not have hesitated to cannonade an underseas boat. He might have thought it his duty to destroy a contrivance of this kind as readily as he would a gigantic narwhal. You see then, do you not, continued the stranger, that I have the right to treat you as enemies and prisoners of war? When one has nothing to say, it is a good thing to sit tight. I said nothing, for what good would it do to discuss our situation when force could immediately destroy the very best argument? I have hesitated for some time, the commander went on to say, for I in no way felt obliged to offer you hospitality. If I should so choose, I am justified in placing you back on the deck of the vessel which served you as a temporary refuge. Then I could sink beneath the waters and forget that you had ever existed. You acknowledge that I should be within my rights? Within the rights of a savage, I answered with some heat, but not those of a civilized man. Look here, flashed the commander. I am not what you so glibly call a civilized man. I have broken with society for reasons which I alone am able to appreciate. I am therefore not subject to its stupid laws, and I ask you to never allude to them in my presence again. That speech was as plain as a pikestaff. A flash of anger and contempt kindled in the eyes of the unknown, and I had a fleeting vision of some terrible past in the life of this man. Not only had he put himself beyond the pale of human laws, but he had made himself independent of them. In the strictest sense of the word, he was free, because he was outside the reach of the moral code. What booted it, under such circumstances, to pursue him to the bottom of the sea, when on its surface he defied all organized attempts against him? What vessel, yet contrived by the hands of man, could withstand the shock of this submarine monitor? What steel sheathing, however thick, could outlive the blows of his spur? No man born of woman might demand of him an account of actions. God alone, if he believed in one, his own conscience, if he had one, these were the sole supreme judges to whom he was answerable. These thoughts darted through my mind, while the stranger was silent, wrapped up in his own somber reflections. I regarded him with fear, and yet with decided interest, much, I suppose, as Oedipus studied the stone-faced Sphinx. It was only after a long interval of silence that the commander resumed conversation. Although I have delayed in coming to a decision, he said, yet I believe my selfish interests might be reconciled with the exercise of that pity to which every living creature has a right. You will therefore remain on my vessel, since it has pleased fate to cast you there. You will be free, and in exchange for this liberty I shall impose but one condition. Your word of honor to submit to it will suffice. Out with it, sir, I replied. I suppose it is a condition to which a gentleman can agree? Of course, it is possible that events may arise which oblige me to consign you to your cabins for some hours or even days. As I shall employ no violence to enforce my will, I expect from you free more than from all the others unquestioning obedience. In thus controlling your actions, I assume all responsibility. I quit you entirely of all blame for promising blindness to what you ought not to see. Do you accept this one condition to your freedom? So, things took place on this boat which, to say the least, were singular. Things that should not be witnessed by people still within the pale of social laws. My sixth sense told me that among the many surprises that the near future was undoubtedly preparing for me, this fact would be by no means the least. We accept, I answered. Only I ask your permission to address one question to you. Only one. Speak, sir. You said that we should be free on board. Entirely. I ask you then what you mean by this liberty. Just the liberty to go, to come, to see, to observe even all that passes here, save under rare circumstances, the liberty, in short, which we ourselves, my companions and I. It was evident that we did not understand one another. Pardon me, sir, I resumed. But this liberty is only what every prisoner has of pacing his prison. It cannot suffice us. It must, however, suffice you. What? We must renounce forever seeing our country, our friends, our relatives again? Yes, sir, but to renounce that unendurable worldly yoke which men believe to be liberty is not perhaps so painful as you think. Well, exclaimed Ned Land, never will I give my word of honor not to try to escape. I did not ask for your word of honor, Mr. Land, answered the commander coldly. Sir, I replied, beginning to get angry in spite of myself, you take advantage of your position with regard to us. It is cruelty. No, sir, it is clemency. You are my prisoners of war. I keep you, when I could, by a word, plunge you into the depths of the ocean. You attacked me. You came to surprise a secret which no man in the world must penetrate, the secret of my whole existence. And do you think that I am going to send you back to that world which must know me no more? Never. Imitating you, it is not you whom I guard, it is myself. These words indicated a resolution on the part of the commander against which no arguments would prevail. Well then, my dear sir, I rejoined, you offer us simply the choice between life and death? Just that, nothing more. My friends, I said to Ned Land in council, we have politely asked a question to which there is no answer, but at least no plighted words binds us to the matter of this craft. That is understood, sir, affirmed the unknown. Then he continued in a gentler tone, and now permit me to finish what I started out to say. I know you, Mr. Aronnax, and I doubt whether you will have so much to complain of in our enforced companionship as you seem to fear. Among my favorite books, you will find your own published works on the mysteries of the depths under sea. You have carried your investigations as far as terrestrial science permitted you to, but you do not know all there is to know, nor have you seen everything available. Let me assure you, then, Professor, that you will never regret the time spent on board my ship. You are going to visit the fairyland of marvels. I shall not deny that these words of the commander had an enormous effect on me. He had touched my weak point. For a moment, I forgot that the occupation with such sublime subjects might not be worth the loss of my personal liberty. Anyway, I must trust the future to decide the grave answer at issue. Meanwhile, I contented myself with inquiry. By what name shall I address you, sir? To you, I am only Captain Nemo. To me and your companions are nothing but passenger's on the Nautilus. Then Captain Nemo summoned a steward and gave him orders in that strange language I could not understand. A repast awaits you in your cabin, he said, turning to Ned Land and Conseil. Will you two be good enough to follow this man? And now, Mr. Aronnax, our breakfast is ready. Permit me to lead the way. I'm entirely at your service, sir. I followed Captain Nemo from the room. In the moment I passed through the door, I found myself in a corridor lighted by electricity, very similar to the waist of a ship. We had gone a dozen yards or so when a second door opened before me. We entered a dining room, decorated and furnished in a severe taste. High oaken sideboards, inlaid with ebony, stood at the two ends of the room, and on their shelves glittered china, porcelain, and crystal glass of inestimable value. A plate sparkled there in the rays diffused from the luminous ceiling, and the light was tempered and softened by exquisite paintings hung upon the wall. In the center of the room was a table richly spread. Captain Nemo indicated the place I was to occupy. The breakfast consisted of a goodly number of dishes, the contents of which were furnished by the sea. I was ignorant of the nature of many of them and the mode of their preparation. I could not but agree that they were excellent, and even when they had a peculiar flavor, I grew easily accustomed to them. These different foods seemed to be rich in phosphorus, and I felt they must be marine origin. Captain Nemo looked across at me with a slight smile. I'd asked him no question, but apparently he guessed my thoughts. He answered of his own accord much that I was eager to know. The majority of these dishes are unknown to you, I suppose, he said. However, you may eat of them without hesitation, for they are wholesome and nourishing. Long ago I renounced the foods of earth, and I am never ill now. My crew, who are invariably healthy, are fed on the same sort of aliment. Then all these eatables are the produce of the sea? Without exception. The sea supplies my every want. Sometimes I cast my nets in tow and draw them in, ready to break with their great draught of fish. Sometimes I hunt and districts of the element that are inaccessible to man, and there I quarry the game that dwells in my submarine forest. My flocks, like those of Neptune's ancient shepherds, graze fearlessly on the vast prairies of the ocean. I am owner of a property immense beyond the power of computation. I cultivate it myself, but it is always sown by the hands of him who created all living things. I understand perfectly well that your nets furnish delicious seafoods to your table, I said. I can grasp also how you hunt aquatic game in your undersea preserves, but how can this particular of meat, which I have just taken on my fork, figure in your bill of fare? What you believe to be meat, Professor, is nothing but fillet of turtle. By your side, likewise, are some dolphin's livers, which I assume you took to be ragout of pork. My chef is a clever fellow, and he excels in preparing the various products of the ocean. Taste, I beg of you, all these dishes. Here, for example, is a preserve of Holothuriae, which a Malay would swear was unrivaled in the world. And here is a cream, the milk for which has been furnished by cetacean, and the sugar by the great Bacchus of North Sea. And lastly, permit me to offer you a neat jam, which I believe to be equal in taste to any derived from the most delicious fruits of land. I tasted and nibbled, more from curiosity than as a connoisseur, the while Captain Nemo enchanted me with his extraordinary stories. You love the sea from preference, Captain? Yes, sir, I love it. The sea is everything. It covers 7/10 of the terrestrial globe. Its breath is pure and life-giving. It is an immense desert place where man is never lonely, where he senses the weaving of creation on every hand. It is a physical embodiment of supernatural existence. You believe then, sir, in another and higher world than this? A needless question, Professor. Of course I do, for the sea is itself nothing but love and emotion. It is the living infinite, as one of your poets has said. Nature manifests herself in it, the three kingdoms, mineral, vegetable, and animal. The ocean is the vast reservoir of nature. But she has been outstriped by the terrestrial world, wherein the globe began with the sea. I doubt not that the globe will end with it, for in her alone supreme tranquility, the peace that passeth understanding. The sea does not belong to despots. Upon its surface men can still exercise unjust laws, can fight, tear one another to pieces, exercise every known terrestrial horror. But at 30 feet below its surface, the reign of men ceases. Their power disappears. Their influence is quenched. Ah, my dear professor, live in the bosom of the waters. There alone is independence. There I recognize no master. There I am free. Captain Nemo, for several minutes, had been quite carried away by his enthusiasm, but now, in the very midst of it, he became suddenly silent. He paced up and down the room in evident agitation. After a while, however, he grew more calm and regained his accustomed coldness of mind. And he turned to me. And now, Professor, he said, if you wish to go over the Nautilus, I am at your service. Yeah, there's a chapter. It's the raccoon. Wait, raccoon is. Wait, raccoon's good. Wait. Hold up. That's actually good. Wait. Hello, Zyke. And hello, Lala. Did I make a cutie, Lala? Hope you had a good nap. I need to drink water. Go. Exist once more. That chapter was a long one. I'm actually going to sleep. I have to get up in 6 hours, roughly. Oh boy, that's rough. I hope you sleep well then. I hope you enjoyed the bit of the story. I'm really enjoying it. So it has weird descriptions sometimes. Why is it going so detailed? This good story. I also need to refill my. Also have to get up, refill my water bottle. I'll be right back. Blah, blah, blah. Wow, I have more water. Also, reading, I realize, is hard. I feel like I should change the voices, but I feel like if I focus on voice acting, it'll be harder. So, what to do? I also don't know what voices I give people, because then I'd have to do a French accent for the French people. And I feel like that wouldn't go well. The raccoon sounds? Alright, I got that. French raccoon, not the French raccoon. They don't even live in France. It's take a second. I have to open the thing. I also have to add it. Microphone has a thing. I don't know why I don't have it on by default. Probably just because I'm lazy. And I don't want to go through the effort. Then again, if I just open it by default. Where are the microphone settings in audio? Right. Mic auxiliary audio 2. Dun dun dun. Just buy the thing. Shouldn't I? It's $50. But yeah, I'm honest. I also don't know what a French accent sounds is. Notable problem. I need to answer a message. What? Oh, I'm reading bedtime stories? Yes. Hello, Nikki. I am kind of reading bedtime stories, I guess. Is how I could say it. I'm not sure what qualifies as a bedtime story, but I'm reading it at night when people should be sleeping. So, bedtime story makes perfect sense. This should also work. I should be audible. That's not loud enough, I don't think. Okay, I guess you could hear that if I played it then. Then you're commenting on it. But of all the sounds I have, this is the only one I like and tolerate. Ew. That's something, I guess. I should still find, like, the angry raccoon sounds for when I ping enemies. It's just that finding angry raccoon sounds, the videos are always kind of concerning with what they're doing to the raccoon. So I don't like looking at them. Yeah, surely I'll be able to find just a raccoon that's mad at people. Oh, that's a very cute one, yes. Because raccoons are very cute. Alright, okay, back to reading. I think the sound setting should also work out fine like this. I should save this file. I should save after every chapter. What am I doing? I don't know how to tell it's saved. It doesn't make a save sound. Oh wait, there it is. It says saved. Okay. A cracking of my fingers. Okay. Alright. Alright, okay, back to reading. Oh, many worlds. Chapter 11, The Nautilus. My host bowed to me to precede him. A double door contrived at the rear of the room opened, and I entered an apartment equal in its dimensions to the one that I had just quitted. It was a library. Tall pieces of furniture of black violet ebony inlaid with brass held on their broad shelves a great number of books uniformly bound. The high cases followed the shape of the room and terminated toward the bottom in huge divans covered with brown Morocco leather, overstuffed and rounded in order to assure the great comfort. Light, movable desks fashioned to slide in or out at the whim of the user afforded a convenient bookrest for the reader. In the center of the ample study room stood an immense table strewn with pamphlets and journals of every sort, including magazines and newspapers, the latter chiefly of fairly old date. The electric light flooded every nook and corner of the library. It was shed from 4 ground glass globes, half concealed in the volutes of the ceiling. I looked with unfeigned admiration and envy at this apartment so ingeniously fitted up that I could scarcely trust the evidence of my own eyes. The captain had thrown himself upon one of the divans. "This, sir," said I, "is a library, which would more than honor a continental palace. You may guess my amazement to find it following you to the floors of the ocean. But where else could one find greater solitude or silence?" my host demanded, with a twinkle in his eyes. "Did your study in the Paris Museum afford you such absolute quiet?" "Far from it. And compared to yours, I must confess it is a very modest one. You have 6,000 or 7,000 volumes here?" 12,000, Mr. Aronnax, and these tomes are the only ties that bind me to the earth. The day on which the Nautilus first plunged beneath the waters, I renounced the world. That day, I purchased my last volumes, my final pamphlets and papers, and from that moment I prefer to think that men no longer study the reasons for things, write them down. These books, sir, are at your disposal, and you may use them freely. I thanked Captain Nemo profusely and went closer to the shelves to examine the library. Here I discovered works on science, ethics, and literature, but I did not come across a single volume which dealt with political economy. That subject seemed to be strictly prescribed. Oddly enough, the books were thrust onto the shelves in irregular arrangement, a fact that would seem to argue they had been read by the commander of the Nautilus at random, or at least indiscriminately. "I'm greatly obliged, sir, that you have placed this library at my disposal," I said. "It is a vast storehouse of science and contains many real treasures. I shall profit by them." "But, my dear fellow," said my host, "this room is not only a library, it is also a smoking room." "Smoking room!" I cried. "I never hoped to hear that word again. Is the use of tobacco on board not prohibited?" "But not at all. Then, sir, I am inclined to believe that you kept up a communication of sorts with Havana." "Guess again," answered the captain. "Pray accept this cigar, Mr. Aronnax, and though its birthplace was not Cuba or Key West or Tampa, I fancy you'll be greatly pleased with it if you are a connoisseur of good tobaccos." I gladly accepted the cigar proffered to me. Its shape recalled ones I had bought in London, but it seemed to be made of leaves of gold. I lighted it at a small brazier, which was supported by an elegant bronze stem, and inhaled the first whiffs of smoke with a delight too deep for words, but one that will be recognized by any lover of tobacco who has been shut off from use of the weed for 2 days. "It is incomparable," I said, "but it is, after all, tobacco." "No," acknowledged the captain. "This product comes from neither Havana nor the East. It is a sort of seaweed, rich in nicotine, with which the sea provides me, albeit somewhat sparingly." It was at this juncture that my host opened the door, which stood opposite the one by which we had entered the library, and I passed into an immense drawing room, which was splendidly lighted. Wait, hold on, 1 second. Quick break. for it. It was a vast rectangular chamber, 30 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 15 feet high. A luminous ceiling with scrolls of arabesques diffused a soft, clear light over all the marvels accumulated in this museum. For a museum, it could be most fitly called. And in its restricted space, an intelligent, if a spendthrift, hand had gathered an amazing medley of the best treasures of nature and art. They were set forth with the artistic confusion that characterizes a painter's studio. 30 exceptional pictures, uniformly framed, separated one from another by bright draperies, ornamented the walls, which themselves were hung with tapestries of severe design. I noticed works of great value, the greater part of which I had admired in the galleries of Europe and in private exhibitions. The old masters were represented by a Madonna of Raphael, a Virgin of Leonardo da Vinci, a nymph of Correggio, a woman of Titian, an Adoration of Veronese, an Assumption of Murillo, a portrait of Holbein, a monk of Velasquez, a martyr of Ribeira, and a fair of Rubens, together with landscapes and genre paintings by Teniers, Gerardo Metsu, and Paul Potter. Modern artists likewise were represented by pictures with the most famous signatures, and some admirable statues in marble and bronze, splendidly copied from the finest antique models, stood upon pedestals in the corners of this magnificent museum. Amazement, as the captain of the Nautilus had prophesied, took hold of me at what I saw. "Professor," said this strange man, "you must excuse the unceremonious way in which I receive you, and also the disorder of this room." "My dear sir," I made reply, without seeking to penetrate your identity, "have I the honor of being in the presence of an artist?" "An amateur, nothing more, I assure you. In former years I loved to collect these beautiful things that had been created by the hand of man. I sought them greedily everywhere, and I admit that I have brought together some objects of priceless worth. They are my souvenirs of a world which is dead to me. In my eyes, your modern artists are already old, for they have 2,000 or 3,000 years behind them. I confuse them in my own mind. Masters have no age." "And is the case the same with these musicians?" I asked as I pointed at the bound scores of the great composers of recent centuries, which were strewn across the top of a large model piano organ which occupied one of the panels of the drawing room. "Yes," replied Captain Nemo, "Mozart, Beethoven, and Gounod are contemporaries of fabled Orpheus, for in the memory of the dead all differences of time are erased. And I am as effectively dead, Professor, as those of your friends who are sleeping beneath 6 feet of earth." Captain Nemo was silent and seemed lost in a profound reverie. I contemplated him with deep interest, striving to analyze the strange expression of his countenance. As he leaned on his elbow against an angle of a costly mosaic table, he no longer saw me. He had forgotten my presence. I did not disturb him, but continued my observation of the curiosities which enriched the apartment. Under splendid glass cases, held together by copper rivets, were classified and labeled the most precious productions of the sea which had ever been presented to the gaze of a naturalist. My specialist delight can be conceived. The division containing the zoophytes offered positively unique specimens of the two groups of polypi and echinodermes, and a conchologist whose nerves were not made of iron would have swooned before more numerous cases in which were classified the specimens of mollusks. There were collections of inestimable value, and I would fain describe them minutely, but I shall spare my reader and content myself with saying that there was here spread out before me every kind of delicate and fragile shell to which science has given an appropriate name. Apart in separate compartments were spread out chaplets of pearls of the most exotic beauty, which reflected the electric light in little sparks of fire. Some of these pearls were larger than a pigeon's egg, and were presumably worth more than the one tavernier the traveler sold to the Shah of Persia for 3 millions, even surpassing the one in the possession of the Imam of Muscat, which I had hitherto believed to be unrivaled in the world. Captain Nemo must have spent unheard sums of money in the acquirement of these collections, and I was speculating as to what source he could have drawn from thus to gratify his taste for beauty and science, when I was interrupted by his words. "You are examining my shells, Professor? They should be very interesting to a naturalist like yourself, but to me they have a far greater charm, for I have assembled them all with my own hand, and there is not a sea on the face of the globe that has escaped my researches. It must have been great fun to roam about in the midst of such riches, and a sheer delight to know that no museum in Europe possesses a collection of one half the value. But if I exhaust all my admiration in this room, Captain, I shall have none left to extend upon the craft that carries us. I do not wish to pry into your secret, sir, but I must confess this Nautilus has excited my curiosity to the highest pitch. What motive power is confined in it? What contrivances determine its operations? What powerful agent propels it? Why, I see suspended on the walls of this very room instruments of whose use I am most woefully ignorant. You will find these same instruments in my own room, Professor, where I shall have much pleasure in explaining their use to you. But first, come and inspect the quarters I have set aside for your use. You must see how you will be housed on board the Nautilus." I followed my host. We began the race of the ship from where he conducted me toward the bow, and there I found not the sort of cabin I expected, but a spacious room with a bed, dressing table, and several other pieces of furniture. I could but thank him for his thoughtfulness in my behalf. "Your room adjoins mine," he said, opening the door which joined the two cabins, "and mine leads into the drawing room that we have just left." I entered the captain's stateroom. It had a severe, almost a monkish aspect. A small iron bedstead, a table, some articles for the toilet, that was all. The whole was lighted by a transom in the ceiling. No comforts were visible, the strictest necessaries only. Captain Nemo pointed to a chair. "If you will give me the pleasure of your company some little while," he said, "I shall satisfy your curiosity regarding the Nautilus, and I shall try not to bore you." Alright. Wait, isn't Nick a new Pokemon? I guess I can't say that. Yes, distractions. Visible water noises. Save the thing. There's nothing there. Alright. Okay. Continue reading. I think I can do a couple more chapters. How many did I do last time? I think I did 6 next time. So just try and keep it to 6 and be consistent. Alright, just go in time. Let's see what happens. Oh well. Where is this thing? Here it is. God. So many wires. Don't sit on the tail. It makes me uncomfortable. Get that done. Chapter 12. The Soul of the Nautilus. With a wave of the hand, my host indicated the instruments that hung on the walls of his room. Here, he began, are the contrivances which control the navigation of the submarine. I have them always under my eyes, and they tell me my position in exact direction in the middle of the ocean. Which ones are known to you? The thermometer, of course, which gives us the internal temperature, and the barometer, which marks the weight of the air and foretells changes in the weather. To the left is the hygrometer, which, if its name be any clue, must measure the dryness of the atmosphere. Oh yes, and next to it is the storm glass, the contents of which, by decomposing, announce the approach of tempests. And here is the compass which guides your course. But what is the next object? A sextant, one of a different shape, perhaps, from what you are used to seeing. I was stupid indeed not to know it, anyhow. Well, that shows you the latitude by the altitude of the sun. There are the chronometers by which you calculate the longitude, and beside them the day and night glasses, through which you examine the points of the horizon whenever the Nautilus rises to the surface of the waves. These are the usual nautical instruments, but the others, which I do not know, in what way do they answer the particular requirements of your ship? This dial with the movable meter is a manometer, said Captain Nemo. By communication with the water, whose external pressure it registers, it gives us our depths at the same time. But really, Professor, there is a much better way for me to explain things to you than by discussing one by one, and separately the various technical tools which you do not understand. Suppose I give you the basic explanation of the soul of the Nautilus. Will you listen? Like a good child to his father's words. Very well then. There is a powerful agent which is obedient, rapid, easy, and comfortable to every use. It reigns supreme on board my vessel. Every blessed thing is done by means of it. This agent warms it, lights it, and is the heart and soul of my mechanical apparatus. Its name is electricity. You don't mean it, I cried in surprise. I do mean it, said the captain. But my dear sir, your ship has an extreme rapidity of movement which does not at all agree with the function of electrical energy as I understand it. Until now, its dynamic force has remained under restraint and has been able to produce only a small amount of power. Ah, said Captain Nemo, but you see, my electricity is not everybody's. You know what seawater is composed of? In 1,000 grams of it are found 96.5% of water and about 2% of chloride of sodium, small quantities of chlorides of magnesium and potassium, bromide of magnesium, sulfate of magnesia sulfate, and carbonate of lime. Chloride of sodium thus forms a large part of the separable ingredients. It is this that I extract from seawater, and of which in combination I compose my formula. I owe all to the ocean. It provides electricity, and from this I derive heat, light, motion, in a word, the very life of the Nautilus. But surely not the air you breathe. I can manufacture the air for my consumption, but where is the use when I rise to the surface of the sea at will? And yet, even if electricity does not furnish me with air to breathe, it at least operates the powerful pumps that are stored in spacious reservoirs, and which enable me to prolong as long as I care to my stay in the depths of the sea. This marvelous agent gives a uniform and unintermittent light which the sun does not. Can you tell time by it, as well as by the sun? Ho, far better, my friend. Look at yonder clock. It is electrical and runs with a regularity that defies the best chronometers. You notice that I have divided the dial into 24 hours, like the Italian clocks. For with me there is neither night nor day, but only that factitious light that I take with me to the bottom of the ocean. See, just now it is 10 o'clock in the morning. Exactly. That ends, I presume, the uses to which you put your willing agent? By no manner of means. Here's another application of electricity. The dial hanging straight in front of you indicates the speed of our ship. An electric thread puts it in communication with the screw, and the needle registers the actual rate we are traveling. Look, we are now spinning along at uniform speed of 15 miles an hour. Will wonders never cease? You were inspired when you made a a servant of power that replaced wind, water, and steam. We are still far from through, Mr. Aronnax, said my host, rising. If you are willing, we'll look over the stern quarters of the Nautilus. In reality, I already knew the anterior part of the submarine boat, of which this is the exact division starting from the ship's head. The dining room, 5 yards long, separated from the library by a watertight partition. The library, 5 yards long. The large drawing room, 10 yards long, separated from the captain's room by a second watertight partition. The said room, 5 yards in length. Mine, 2.5 yards. And lastly, a reservoir of air, 7.5 yards, that extended to the bows. Total length, 35 yards, or 105 feet. The partition had doors that were closed hermetically by means of India rubber instruments, and that ensured the safety of the Nautilus in case of a leak. I followed Captain Nemo through the waist and arrived at the center of the boat. Here, a sort of well opened between two partitions. An iron ladder, fastened with an iron hook to the partition, led to the upper end. I asked the captain what the ladder was used for. It leads to the small boat, he said. Ye gods and little fishes, have you a boat? I asked in much surprise. There's nothing remarkable about that, and it's an excellent sailor, too. Light and insubmersible. It serves me as a fishing craft or as a pleasure boat. But surely, when you wish to embark in it, you must first come to the surface of the water. Not at all. It is attached to the upper part of the hull of the Nautilus, and occupies a cavity specifically made for it. It is decked over entirely watertight and held together by solid bolts. Describe to me the process of embarking in it when under sea. Most willingly. This ladder leads to a manhole made in our submarine's hull, which corresponds to a similar hole in the side of the small boat. By this double opening, I enter. They shut the one belonging to the Nautilus. I close the other by means of screw pressure. I undo the bolts, and the little craft shoots up to the surface of the sea with prodigious speed. I then open the panel of the bridge, which till then has been carefully shut. I mast it, hoist my sail, and take up my oars, and I'm off. Off you are, Captain, I see that. But how, in the name of mystery, do you get on, or rather in, again? Oh, I don't come back, Mr. Aronnax. The Nautilus comes and gets me when I order it. And they know where to find you? Why not? An electric thread connects us. I simply telegraph what I wish to. It is quite simple. All things are simple, I said, astonished at these marvels, when you know how to do them. After we had passed by the cage of the staircase that led to the platform, I saw a cabin 6 feet long in which Conseil and Ned Land, enchanted with their repast, were devouring it with avidity. Then a door opened into a kitchen 9 feet long, which was situated between the large storerooms. Electricity did the cooking here better than gas itself. The streams of current under the furnaces lent to the sponges of Platinia a heat that was regularly maintained and distributed. The flow of current also heated a distilling apparatus which, by evaporation, furnished excellent water for drinking. Near this kitchen was a bathroom, comfortably furnished and fitted with hot and cold water taps. Next was the berth room of the vessel, 16 feet long, but the door was shut, and I could not see the arrangement of it, which might have given me an idea of the number of men employed on the Nautilus. Beyond was a fourth partition that separated off the engine room. A door opened, and I found myself in the compartment in which Captain Nemo, who must be an engineer of a very high order, had installed his locomotive machinery. This engine room, clearly lighted, did not measure less than 65 feet in length. It was divided into two sections. The first part contained the apparatus for producing electricity, and the second, the machinery that connected it with the screw. I studied it with great interest in order, if possible, to understand the engines of the Nautilus. You note, said the captain, that I use Bunsen's contrivances and not Ruhmkorff's. The latter would not have been powerful enough. Bunsen's units are fewer in number, but large and strong, which experience proves to be the most satisfactory. The electricity produced passes forward, where through electromagnets of few size, it works on a system of levers and cogwheels that transmit the rotary movement to the axle of the screw. This one, the diameter of which is 19 feet, and the thread 23 feet, performs about 120 revolutions a second. And you get thereby a speed of 50 miles an hour. I saw the Nautilus maneuver before the Abraham Lincoln, and already had my own ideas as to its speed. But speed is not the only, and often not the chief, requisite. You must see where you go. You must be able to direct your ship to the right, to the left, above, and below. How do you get to the depths where you find an increasing resistance, which is rated by hundreds of atmospheres? How do you return to the surface of the ocean, and how do you maintain yourselves in the requisite medium? Am I asking too much, Captain? Not at all, Professor, replied my courteous host, but only after a slight hesitation. You may as well know, seeing that you are never going to leave the submarine. Come into the saloon, which usually serves us for study, and there you will learn all you wish to know about the Nautilus. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. That was 12 chapters, I think, if I can read. Yes. So I think I might just do 12 chapters each, because or 12 chapters, 6 chapters each time. Just keep it consistent, and I might go actually start to not feel like it. I can form sentences. So I think I will end it here. I also have stuff I need to do, so it's fine. And leaving on another cliffhanger where we find out about the secrets of the ship seems like a great idea to do, because that's exactly what I did last time. I don't think I I didn't wait, no I did, okay. Wait, I have to turn this off. Also drink some water. Where's this thing? Oh no, surely it doesn't matter. But yeah, actually, I shall read. I shall raid Jose. It's Jose's stream. I don't think I've said hi to Jose in a while. Which is wait no. Wait no, it's not yesterday. Yeah, okay. It has been. So thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. And maybe next time I'll read more. Probably not. Yes. Alright. Raid messages. Raid. That's the wrong one. Okay, wait, hold on. I'm in the wrong chat. I typed that in Jose's chat. Whoops. Okay, whoops. Okay, okay. Embarrassing. We don't discuss that. We leave quickly. Thank you for coming. Why can't I type? Never discuss embarrassing things. Surely these things happen all the time, surely. People mess up. Where's the right thing? There we go. Yes. Things work out in the end. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you all later. Bye bye. I die now.